The rain had been falling for hours over the crooked skyline of Holloridge, a town as ancient as the whispers that once haunted it, where the streetlights flickered like trembling candles and the wind carried secrets in every gust. Among the twisting alleyways and moss-covered gravestones stood a crumbling orphanage, now abandoned, but once the site of the town's darkest chapter, and it was there that Amelia Rayburn arrived under the cloak of midnight, driven by something deeper than fear, by a dream she had since childhood, one where a voice whispered her name and begged for light in the darkness. A voice that sounded like her mother's but ended in a scream she never heard in real life. Amelia had returned to Holloridge not as a child, but as a woman who had grown up with more nightmares than memories, carrying a weathered locket around her neck that held nothing inside it except a folded slip of parchment that simply read, "Seek refuge in the Lord of Daybreak." She never understood it until now. As she pushed open the creaking iron gate, her fingers brushed against the cold, slick rust, and the sound echoed like a cry down the fog-snarled road behind her, and in that moment, she felt it. The presence of something unseen, not watching her, but waiting. The air thickened, heavy with the scent of damp stone, old wood, and something else, something unholy. Her breath trembled as she stepped into the orphanage, her boots sinking slightly into the soggy floorboards, and the silence inside wasn't empty, it pulsed. As her flashlight flickered across peeling walls and broken cribs, shadows darted just beyond its beam, and though no child had lived here in decades, she swore she heard the giggle of one echo from the far hall, warped and stretched, like a recording played backward. That was when she met Elias. He appeared like a ghost himself, tall, pale, with eyes like storm cloud glass and a voice that was too calm for a place so haunted. "You're Amelia," he said without surprise. "You've come for the mirror." She hadn't spoken a word. Her heart caught in her throat. "How do you know my name?" she whispered. Elias turned and began walking, offering no answer, only a presence that seemed to part the air like a blade through fog, and despite the terror in her spine, Amelia followed. Down the corridor, past the nursery doors that opened and closed on their own, they reached a sealed chamber, its door marked with the word Al-Falak, scorched into the wood. "This room was never opened by the caretakers," Elias said. "It held something old. Something that feeds on envy, on secrets, on the wounds people hide." "What kind of something?" she asked. "The kind you don't look at unless you're ready to lose who you are," Elias answered, and with a solemn nod, he pushed open the door. Inside was darkness, but not the kind created by absence of light. This darkness felt alive, moving at the edges, writhing like smoke underwater, and at its center stood a tall, antique mirror, draped in a velvet cloth blacker than night. Amelia stepped forward. She didn't know why, only that the dream, the voice, the scream, all of it led her here. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. "Before you do this, know that once the mirror sees you, it shows you not just your reflection but what watches you through it. The evil of the night, the whisperer of hidden things, the one who cursed this place when he swore vengeance against the light." Amelia nodded slowly. Her hand reached out, fingers trembling, and she pulled the cloth away. At first, nothing but her own reflection stared back. Pale, breathless, eyes wide with disbelief. Then, the lights flickered. The mirror's surface rippled. A second image appeared behind her, her mother, in the gown she wore the night she vanished, face twisted in fear, reaching out silently. Amelia turned, but the room was empty. When she looked back, the mirror was full of moving shapes. Her childhood, moments she forgot, tears she never cried, and behind all of it, a shadow that grew taller, darker, until it filled the mirror, pressing against the glass like it wanted to escape. "You must speak the refuge," Elias said urgently, but his voice seemed farther away now. "Surah Al-Falak," he said again. "Say it. Say it now." The darkness hissed. A voice that sounded like hers but wasn't, echoed from the mirror. From the evil of what he created, her voice joined it. "From the evil of darkness when it settles." The mirror shook. A crack raced across the glass like lightning. "From the evil of those who blow on knots," Elias shouted. "Finish it." Her breath caught. "From the evil of the envier when he envies." The mirror shattered. Black smoke poured from it like blood from a wound. Screaming voices swirling in the air like a cyclone of agony and rage. And then, silence. When Amelia awoke, she was in a hospital bed. Elias sat beside her, blood on his shirt, an old Quran in his lap. "You saw him," he said. "The whisperer. The same one that cursed your mother, that haunted this town. But you drove him back. Is he gone?" she asked. Elias looked out the window. Dawn was breaking. "Not gone, but weakened. He'll return. And next time, he'll come for the heart." She reached for the locket around her neck. It was glowing faintly, warm for the first time. "Then I'll be ready," she said, and in that quiet morning light, she finally understood what it meant to seek refuge. Not from fear itself, but from the one who hides in it, waits in it, and uses it to whisper ruin. But she would no longer listen. Not without the light. The morning after the mirror shattered, Hollow Ridge did not feel lighter. It felt more dangerous, like the evil had not been destroyed but scattered, and the town itself was holding its breath. Amelia stood outside the orphanage. Its charred roof now caved in as if the building had finally exhaled after years of holding its curse, and the air was thick with ashes and warnings. Beside her, Elias spoke softly, his voice carrying the weariness of a man who had faced the whisperer more times than he cared to admit, telling her of ancient seals, of how mirrors and occult traditions were not tools for vanity, but gateways. Gateways to realms where envy breathed and shadows fed on silent pain. "You weakened it," he said. "But when you break the gate, you don't always trap the monster. You let it loose." Amelia looked at her hands, still shaking from the night before. She thought she had won. She thought the invocation of the verse was enough. But as they walked away from the wreckage, every face she passed in town seemed colder, eyes darker, and behind every polite smile she felt a subtle pressure, like they were all watching her, waiting. That night, the dreams returned, only now they weren't hers. She dreamt through the eyes of others. A man whispering ancient names into a bottle of perfume. A girl tying knots into a doll's hair with rage in her heart. A child crying in a forest while a voice, his voice, cooed into her ears, promising revenge. She awoke drenched in sweat, her throat raw from screaming names she didn't recognize. The locket around her neck burned cold. Across town, Elias had found something buried beneath the orphanage's east wing. A small chest filled with notes, talismans, and one name scrawled again and again in a shaking hand. Surah. She was the first, Elias said as Amelia studied the ink. An orphan. She disappeared in 1904. The record said she was adopted. But this says she was chosen. The chest contained pieces of hair, old photos scratched with symbols, and a mirror shard still slick with dried blood. Amelia touched it and the world twisted. She saw Surah, not as a girl, but as a woman with eyes full of grief, standing in a circle of robed figures in the Hollow Ridge woods, reciting something from a torn page. Behind her, the whisperer loomed, tall, shapeless, breathing her hate like incense. She was trying to protect the town, Amelia said, gasping. She bound the darkness into that mirror. And now that mirror is broken, Elias said, and Surah's curse will rise again. The only way forward was to follow the remnants of the spell. They began visiting old churches, libraries, cemeteries, piecing together the truth through fragments and rumors. Each step revealed more, rituals performed under crimson moons, children who disappeared on birthdays, and how the true power of the curse wasn't the whisperer himself, but what he stirred in others. Envy, resentment, lust, hidden sins that rotted silently until he whispered and made them scream. The curse did not infect, it seduced. Amelia saw it when she returned to the inn where she was staying. The owner's husband had grown cold, paranoid, accusing her of staring too long at his wife. He wasn't wrong. Amelia and the innkeeper, Rhea, had shared fleeting glances, the kind born from loneliness rather than love. But now those glances burned under suspicion, as if the shadows themselves had stoked the embers into flames of regret and shame. That night, Rhea came to her room, eyes wide, hands trembling. "He's changed," she whispered. "He speaks in his sleep. He keeps whispering your name and something about knots." Before Amelia could speak, the lights flickered. The walls pulsed. A cold wind slithered through the sealed window. The whisperer had arrived. His voice was inside the room, not loud, but beneath everything. Beneath the floorboards, inside the seams of the wallpaper, under the skin. Rhea screamed, and her scream became static as her eyes turned pitch black and her mouth contorted in unnatural angles, muttering spells she should never have known. Elias burst in, chanting verses from Al-Falaq, holding a blade of iron etched with ayat, and the darkness recoiled. Not vanquished, but repelled. Rhea collapsed, unconscious. Her soul, Elias said, was wounded. The whisperer had used her envy as a door. "You're attracting him," Elias said, not in anger, but in sorrow. "He sees something in you. Something Zura had. You're his key." "To what?" "To permanence," he said. "To stepping fully into this world without needing shadows to hide in." That night, Amelia sat alone with her mother's locket in her hand and read Surah Al-Falaq over and over until her voice broke. The darkness trembled, but it did not leave. That's when Elias told her the final truth, that Zura had not died. She had become part of the curse, her soul trapped in the root spell, woven into the mirror, screaming silently through time. Amelia wasn't just her descendant. She was her vessel. "He's coming for you," Elias said, "and you'll either destroy him, or let him in." Amelia touched her reflection again that night. This time, the mirror was just glass. But deep in the silver sheen, for the first time, she saw her own eyes change, just for a moment, into someone else's. Someone ancient. Someone broken. Someone angry. By the third night, Hollow Ridge had begun to change. The townspeople no longer looked one another in the eyes. Children were kept inside. Doors were bolted not because of crime, but because of a cold that seeped into bones, not from the wind, but from within. Amelia stood at the center of it, heart pounding with questions and fear, yet more alive than she had ever felt. Something in her blood pulsed like a forgotten memory, something ancient and defiant. The mirror was broken, but the whisperer was not. He had scattered like poison gas, and now he was slipping through cracks in hearts, creeping into the soft places of the soul, those tender wounds people buried beneath smiles. And Hollow Ridge had many. The innkeeper, Rhea, had not spoken since her possession. She lay wrapped in fevered sleep, whispering half-prayers in the voice of a child. Elias tried everything: recitations, holy water, iron, salt circles. Nothing could wake her soul. And the more Amelia watched her suffer, the more she felt the guilt swell inside her. Because she had felt something for Rhea, an ache, a need to be seen, and she knew now that the whisperer had twisted it, used it to enter. Love was not the sin, but envy's shadow, that silent longing, that wound of "why not me?" That was the door. That night, Elias told her the rest. Zura had loved someone too, a man named Idris, a doctor. He had tended to the orphans, stayed late in the wards, and brought Zura books and small kindnesses. But he loved another, a quiet teacher named Miriam, and the night he proposed to her, Zura watched from the staircase, tears in her eyes, fingers twisted into knots. That was when the whisperer came. He did not appear with claws or horns. He came in her own voice, speaking to her from her mirror, promising strength, beauty, favor. All she had to do was let him in. Just once. One small invitation. And Surah, heartbroken and hollowed, had whispered yes. That night, Maryam vanished. Idris lost his mind within days, carving verses into the walls with his fingernails, trying to warn the town of the woman with the second face. But they thought him mad. He was buried in a forgotten cemetery where roses refused to grow. And now, Elias said, the cycle has returned. The curse moves where love bleeds. Where the heart is weakest, he is strongest. Amelia looked out the window. The moon was split in two by clouds. Then I have to finish what she started, she said. I have to end it. But she hadn't expected someone else to follow her path. His name was Asher. He was a historian from Cambridge, young but world-weary, sent to document supernatural lore in decaying towns. His arrival was not coincidence. The Whisperer called to many in different ways, and Asher had been dreaming of Amelia for weeks before arriving, sketching her face without knowing her name, seeing her eyes in ink as he wrote notes on the Hollow Ridge phenomenon. When they met, it was like the eye of a storm. His calm, her fire. His intellect, her intuition. And beneath it all, a chemistry neither of them wanted, but couldn't deny. They worked side by side, unearthing Zura's final journal from beneath the orphanage chapel. Its pages were riddled with spells, Quranic verses, and desperate confessions. He speaks in the voice of who I love. He knows my wounds. He walks when I hate myself. The last page was blank except for one line, break me and he dies. They knew then what it meant. Zura's soul was still tethered. Her pain was the prison. And if Amelia could release her, truly release her, not with anger but forgiveness, the curse could end. But that required more than rituals. It required love. Pure, untainted love. The kind that could not be manipulated. That could not be envied. That was when the Whisperer struck again. He came not for Amelia, but for Asher. It happened in the library. Asher had been reading, alone, tracing symbols when he suddenly felt her breath on his neck. Not Amelia, but someone else. A woman with green eyes. With a voice like a song he once loved. She whispered things only he knew. His first heartbreak. The lies he told. The guilt he hid. And then she kissed him, and in that kiss, he saw himself on fire, screaming, begging for mercy. He woke on the floor with a sigil carved into his palm. When Amelia found him, he was shaking, crying, muttering Surah Al-Falaq over and over. He knows I love you, he whispered. And he's going to use it. Amelia didn't speak. She couldn't. The words cracked in her throat. Because she had seen the love in his eyes too, and feared it. She didn't want to love again. Not when the shadows listened. Not when every heartbeat could become a weapon. But that night, as the town grew colder and sleep became poison, they held each other in silence. No kiss. No promises. Just warmth against the coming dark. And for a moment, the Whisperer could not enter. Yet dawn brought blood. The mayor's daughter was found dead in the woods, her body surrounded by knots made from her own hair, eyes wide open, mouth sewn shut. A mirror fragment lay on her chest, and on it one word, yours. Amelia collapsed. Guilt devoured her. This is because of me, she sobbed. He's punishing them because he can't take me. Elias shook his head. He's not punishing. He's luring. He wants you to break. To say yes. To surrender. And she almost did. That night, the Whisperer came in her sleep, not as a monster, but as her mother. Smiling. Arms open. Begging her to follow her into the woods. into the mirror. "You don't have to suffer anymore," she said. "You don't have to fight. Just come with me." Amelia stepped forward, then stopped. She placed her hand on her chest and whispered, "Say, I seek refuge in the Lord of Daybreak." The illusion shattered. The forest burned away. The whisperer screamed, but not in rage. In fury. Because she had resisted. Because love had not broken her. It had saved her. When she awoke, she looked at Asher and finally said the words she had feared all her life. "I love you." And for the first time, the locket glowed golden. A new verse appeared, etched in fire on the inside. "He who is the light, and in his light, the shadows die." The fourth night came without moonlight. Clouds covered the sky like a burial shroud, and Hollow Ridge felt breathless, as if the town itself knew something final was about to happen. Amelia stood at the edge of the woods, locket clenched in her fist, heart racing not with fear, but with readiness. She was no longer a seeker of answers. She had become something else. A shield. A vessel of light drawn by pain but molded by faith. The curse had taken too many, whispered into too many hearts, twisted too many wounds into weapons. But now she would find its source, the true root of the darkness that stretched back through bloodlines, mirrors, and forgotten names. The wind that moved through the forest spoke in broken echoes, fragments of laughter and sobs, the stitched-together agony of generations caught in the grip of a creature that fed on what was hidden. And the deeper Amelia and Asher walked, the more time began to twist. Trees bent in directions trees should not bend. Shadows moved against the direction of light. And above all, that ever-present voice, neither male nor female, began to hum softly, a melody that sounded like her own lullabies but reversed, corrupted. Elias had warned them, "You are not entering the woods. You're entering the memory of the first sin." And there it was, waiting in a clearing where roses bloomed black and thorns curled like claws, the ruined foundation of an ancient cottage, the same one Zura once called home. The ghost of her pain lingered in the air like perfume and ash. Beneath the crumbling hearthstone, they found it, the original mirror. Not broken, not cracked, but sealed in chains made of prayer beads and rusted iron, circled with verses that flickered in and out like dying stars. Asher stepped back, his breath uneven. "This is it. This is where he entered." Amelia nodded, her fingers trembling as she reached toward the mirror. But before she could touch it, the air shattered. And he came. The whisperer did not step from the mirror. He bled from it, like ink in water. A figure without form, cloaked in writhing envy, eyes shaped from shattered regrets, a mouth made of every cursed word ever muttered in secrecy. He didn't attack. He didn't scream. He simply looked at her and said, in her voice, "Why do they love her and not you?" Amelia froze. "You were always second," he hissed. "To your sister. To your mother. To your lovers. They used you. Pitied you. Looked through you. Let me in. And I'll make them need you. I'll make them worship you." And then her mother appeared again. And Rhea. And even her father, whom she barely remembered, each begging her to listen. "He only wants your pain," a voice said behind her. It was not Asher. It was Zura. Or what remained of her. She was translucent, flickering, her eyes weary but filled with sorrow deeper than oceans. "I gave in. I believed the lie. I wanted to be more. I wanted them to hurt like I did. And all I became was his." Amelia turned. "How do I stop him?" "Forgive me," Zura said. "Not for the curse, but for being the wound he built himself into." The whisperer screamed, a sound that tore through the trees, shaking the bones of the forest. Asher dropped to his knees, bleeding from his nose, whispering al-Falaq through broken gasps. Elias arrived then, his robes torn, his eyes bloodshot. He held a small book in one hand, its cover scarred and faded, but its contents alive with divine fury. Together they began to recite, "Say, I seek refuge in the Lord of Daybreak," and the whisperer recoiled. From the evil of what he has created, his form began to splinter. His face rippled into countless others, victims, tormentors, versions of herself. From the evil of darkness when it settles, Amelia stepped forward. The mirror pulsed. The chains cracked. From the evil of those who blow on knots, she placed the locket on the glass. Light surged from it, fire and gold and memory all at once. The whisperer screamed again, but it was not rage now. It was fear. And from the evil of the envier when he envies, the mirror exploded in silence. Not with sound, but with stillness so pure it burned. And in that silence he vanished. Not torn apart, not cast away, but refused, denied, cast out not by weapons or spells, but by something far more terrifying to darkness, light that would not break, love that would not twist, faith that would not fade. When Amelia opened her eyes, the forest was normal. The trees stood still. The birds returned. And beside her stood Zura, whole, glowing faintly, smiling. "Thank you," she whispered, and then vanished in a final breath of petals and peace. Asher took Amelia's hand, and for the first time, it felt safe. Not because the danger was gone, but because the fear no longer ruled. Elias wept, not for sorrow, but for hope. They returned to Hollow Ridge at sunrise. The townspeople emerged slowly, blinking into a world they hadn't realized was gray for so long. Rhea awoke that morning, asking for tea. The innkeeper's husband apologized. The mayor cried. And in the heart of the town square, a tree bloomed, where none had ever grown before. Beneath its branches, a plaque was placed, "In the name of the Lord of Daybreak, who ends the night."